Hi guys, my name is Megan and today I've got episode 4 of my favorite urban fantasy series for you. Alright, so I can't believe we're on episode 4 of this series already. So the first one I'm going to talk about today is going to be Nightlife. This is one of my absolute favorite urban fantasy books of all time. So this follows Cal and Nico, and they are just kind of trying to survive. So Cal is half like this demon creature thing, and Nico is wholly human, and Nico is the older brother, and he's just trying to protect Cal. And this is kind of their adventures in New York City when they kind of clash with all of the supernatural creatures that live there, and like how their lives are changing with how they interact with all of these creatures in this urban environment. And this is them just trying to stay ahead of the demons who want to capture Cal and use him to repopulate this demon population that's dying out. It's just such an insane storyline, and it's just so great because these brothers are so good with each other, and there's like found family, and there's all sorts of really cool, awesome things in this book, and I would highly recommend them. So the next book that I'm going to recommend is going to be the Blackwinged series by Christina Henry. I love these books. So this follows Maddie, and she is an agent of death. So she is basically a reaper. So she escorts souls to the doors of death, and death is very like a bureaucratic thing in this universe, and it's kind of an inherited position. So I think she inherited this when she was like 12, like 10 to 15-ish age range, when her mother passed away unexpectedly. You know, she's got her little gargoyle sidekick who likes to eat popcorn, and there's angels and like all sorts of really cool supernatural creatures with werewolves and all sorts of fun stuff. But it's such an interesting book because you get to follow this character as she goes about trying to destroy some monsters that come across, and then she gets blamed for it, and then she gets her job taken away, and she also has this cool found family that kind of congregate around her, and it's just such a really good book series. But this is such a really interesting, like kind of unique within the urban fantasy genre. Kind of. So the next book I'm going to talk about is going to be Dead Until Dark. This is the first book in the Sookie Stackhouse aka True Blood series, and there's probably about 20 of these books or more. Not exactly sure, it's been a while since I've reread them. But this, if you guys have watched the HBO show, it's not necessarily like, it doesn't necessarily follow the books a whole lot from what I remember. So this follows Sookie, and she is kind of this psychic kind of, she can read people's minds, and when they've kind of figured out, so the vampires are out in this universe as well as the werewolves. I think they come out in this book. This whole series kicks off because Sookie's new neighbor is a vampire, and you know, there's kind of romance and a lot of really cool fun adventures. There's lots of supernaturals, there's lots of like small town drama, and like vampires versus werewolves versus were creatures kind of drama. It's so much fun, and there's so much going on. I mean, there are like 20 books in this, so it's a pretty prolific series, and there's a lot going on. But I really love these. So the next book we're going to talk about is one that I really couldn't feasibly do this series without going into, and that's going to be Percy Jackson. So Percy Jackson is probably one of the quintessential young adult urban fantasy like books out there. So you take all of these kids, and they have godly parents, and you put them in this camp, and it's just really interesting, and they have all of these superpowers, and they go out and on these quests to find things or people or bring things back, and it's just so much fun. And I love that the Greek mythology is so meshed into this, and it's almost like created its own like mythos of like how these Greek gods and the Roman gods kind of like mesh together, and which bits of their personality they put forth. It's just so fun and so interesting, and like I said, it's definitely one of the quintessential young adults urban fantasy books that I found. It's just so good. So the next book that we're going to talk about is going to be Carry On. I could not do this series without doing this one either. So this is kind of like Rainbow Rowell's take on the chosen one trope, and Simon Snow, our main character, is kind of the worst chosen one ever. He's like a walking disaster, and I love it. And it's kind of very much like Harry Potter. It's set at a magical school. I believe they can have technology at this school, but I don't think it works quite right. It's just so much fun because you get to see a few different places in how like our main character interacts with like the magical community around him, but also with the regular human world. And it's just so interesting to see how everything like meshes together within this universe. And then I love the end where Simon gets a therapist, and he talks about things with people, and it's just like like that doesn't happen a lot in urban fantasy books, but especially in like other books in general. It's awesome, and I could not recommend this book enough. There's also a second book coming, I think it's in December this year, so keep an eye out for that if you guys have read this, or if you haven't yet, please read this, and then you can join me in my anticipation for December when the next book comes out. Alright, so the last book I'm going to talk about is one that I've actually recently found and I recently read, and I love this book to pieces, and that's going to be Wolf Song. This is the first book in the Green Creek series. So this is one of the best werewolf books that I've found in a long time. This follows Ox, and he's just kind of a sweetheart, and then there's also the Bennetts, who are a pack of werewolves who kind of like charm their way into Ox's life, and it's just such a good read. There's so much drama, so much family and like love, and it's just, this book knows where to hit you in the feels. It's just so good. This book is pretty much about LGBTQ werewolves. Like almost nobody in this pack is straight, and that's okay, and I love it, and it is so good because that means there's all sorts of representation from Ace and Aero. So good, and I love how much representation there's in here. It's just one of the best, like most inclusive urban fantasy books that I've ever come across, and if you guys haven't read it yet, please do. This book needs so much more love. Alright, so that's it for episode 4 of my favorite urban fantasy books. What is an urban fantasy book that's kind of like unique within the urban fantasy world that you guys really enjoy? Let me know down below. And if you guys like this video, don't forget to hit the like button. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. You can also hit the notification button. And if you'd like to follow me on social media, check out the links down below. Alrighty, bye guys!